Scott Frost is getting settled in at UCF, but he's still got some spring cleaning to do.
You are Locked On UCF, your daily podcast on the UCF Knights, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
On in the Locked On UCF, your daily UCF podcast. I'm your host, Mike G, and thank you so much for making Locked On UCF your first listen of every day. For the first word on our show is my good friend Spencer McLaughlin, host of Locked On College Football and Locked On Ducks, college football analyst extraordinaire. Spencer, Scott Frost has been rehired at UCF. Fans are excited about it. It's generated a lot of buzz in the fan base. NIL dollars are flowing. People seem excited about this rehire. There was some argument in the offseason about whether this was just a retread hire or if they could have done better. I think it's a really, really, really good move for Scott Frost. But like I know, in today's college football, fans aren't patient. Boosters aren't patient. And with money flying around, everybody wants results immediately. I think a reasonable rebuild time frame for Scott Frost still is 3 to 4 years. I think that's what you need to do the job. You're going to hit and miss in the portal, but you got to have 3 years minimum to turn this thing around.
Well, I think that depends on what you define as rebuild. Where are you rebuilding towards? Because if the expectation is, by the time you're in peak rebuild mode, it's back to a 13-0 season and, in the playoff national championship discussion. Not sure about that.
Okay.
But if you're talking rebuild and get to a Big 12 championship level, if that's the rebuild level that you're talking about, or the aspirations, which is what you have when you're an athletic director in university, you hire any coach, hey, this guy can take us to a conference championship level. Yeah, that's a 3 to 4 year projection to be squarely in the fold, or to expect to be in the fold. And expectations and results don't always have to align for things to be going well. But in the short term, Mike, I think it's reasonable to expect that Scott Frost can immediately make them a bowl eligible team. I love the dog in the background, by the way, huge fan. But I think that is a reasonable expectation given the Big 12 landscape. This is an incredibly deep conference. It is a very open conference championship race again going into 2025. But for UCF, they're not so far away, or they aren't a program that requires overcoming so much that I think UCF fans should just be patient and just wait, and endure a couple of 3 or 4 win seasons before they really start to pop. That's not how I view the program, given how he's taking it over and also what they can be, because you're in the state of Florida. Mike, you have so much talent in your backyard that bringing it to UCF, if you're running things the right way, and if you do truly have those NIL dollars, and if you're selling kids with the right messages on the trail, you should be able to build a top half roster in the Big 12 within 2 years in the transfer portal. That's if things are going well, because you've got, 16 teams in this league. I don't think there are 8 schools that over a 2-year window should be able to decisively out-recruit and out-talent UCF, again, if things are going as I believe they should. So in the short term, I think some success should be expected, because he's not inheriting a dumpster fire mess. He's also not inheriting a team poised to go win a conference championship. So I think winning a little in the short term, the next 1 to 2 years, and then expecting to take that jump by year 3 and 4, I think that's reasonable for Scott Frost.
Yeah, look, for the record, Spencer, there are 4 dogs here. But speaking of dogs, if you're Scott Frost, you need dogs in your locker room. You need guys who are going to get at it and who are going to carry your creed, right? And what you're preaching. So I agree with you. I think that you should be able to flip a roster in 2 years. However, you need the dollars to do that. Now, all signs point to a lot of enthusiasm around the NIL dollars surrounding the program now that Scott Frost is the coach. and it's tough because the guys that you're trying to beat, they're spending money. However, I think Arizona State proved this year that if you can develop talent at a high level, maybe evaluate a little better than your peers, Cameron Scatterbo, look what he did. Look what he did this year. One of the best running backs in all of college football. Arizona State was picked to finish dead last in the Big 12 by the media. They won the whole damn.
Not me. No, I want to make that inexplicably clear. When that came out, I was decisive on my show saying, yo, I don't know if Arizona State's go. I didn't expect them to be as good as they were. Mm-hmm. Nobody did, even those in Tempe. But when they were picked last, I said, whoa, red flag. That's not right. That's not going to happen. Lo and behold, here we are. But
yeah,
I'm sorry. I just had to shout that out there because I got to take half right.
State and UCF both had two of the better running backs in all of college football. RJ Harvey was an absolute monster last year, but I think that a lot of your rebuild will depend on the elephant in the room, and that is quarterback. UCF couldn't get it right at quarterback last year. I mean, as a matter of fact, you ended up on your fourth string quarterback by the end of the year, and nobody got hurt. KJ Jefferson, again, that was a portal addition that was supposed to carry UCF, and it didn't work out. And so, credit to Gus. He had an opportunity. He went to Ja'Cory Brown. It didn't work out with EJ Colson, and eventually they landed on Dylan Risk. Now, you went and you've gotten Taven from the transfer portal, and you've got some other guys that have come in here too. But without a quarterback, it's really hard to flip your roster if you can't have anybody who can deliver the ball accurately and at a high level consistently in the Big 12. So it comes down to quarterback for me. If he can find his quarterback. Now, you've hired your former quarterback, Mackenzie Milton, as your QB coach. And we remember him from 2017, undefeated season. They kicked the crap out of Auburn in the bowl game to cap what was a historic season for UCF. But now you're in the Big 12. So if you do that again, you're going to get credit for it. You're going to get recognized. You're not going to get left out of a playoff if you're undefeated and you're UCF. So, that's where it stands. I think they got to find a quarterback, and maybe you got to find a diamond in the rough here if you're Scott Frost.
Yeah, and I think that when you're a new coach coming into a situation, there are some places where you want to establish credibility right away and have a ready-to-go guy. For example, Dan Lanning came to Oregon. There was a young 5-star true freshman on the roster at the time named Ty Thompson, and the previous staff had assessed he's not ready yet. Turns out he was never going to be ready to be a college quarterback. Some guys just don't have it. They bring in this transfer from Auburn named Bo Nix, who you might have heard of, and that worked out really well. And Oregon was not able to make the conference championship game. They were on the precipice of doing so until they had a meltdown against their rival on the road in Corvallis that season. But bringing in Bo Nix kind of stabilized things, and also that ended up being a 2-year investment for Oregon and a really fruitful one. So that's one approach that a lot of coaches have. I don't think UCF needs to have that approach because you're not anticipating. Oregon is a program that was in the Pac-12 at the time when Dan Lanning got there. That Mario Cristobal leaves, he didn't take a ton of players with him, so there were talented guys, plenty of blue chippers left behind. They brought in some players in the portal that cycle. The expectation was, hey, you need to be winning 9, 10, 11 games every single year. That's not how I view UCF. Maybe other people do, but if you're Scott Frost, you can afford to play the long game at quarterback and think we want to be at our best at that position in 2026 or 2027 more than we want to win a couple more games in 25, because I don't think that there's a magic eraser out there that comes in at quarterback and suddenly takes UCF to a Big 12 championship in year one. So I certainly still expect that they should be able to win some games, as I said, but if you have the option of, hey, this veteran's got a low ceiling and is going to help us win more games this year, or this young guy that could learn on the job, I'd go with the young guy and learn on the job, because this is not this is a mild turnaround, but I don't think it's an immediate turnaround in that it's just one season and boom, Scott Frost comes in and they're a 10-11 win team.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what the patience level is from fans once they get started. Again, they lost some very winnable games this year. UCF did. I personally, they should have beat They should beat Arizona State last year, if you ask me. Cameron Scadaboo was out for that game, I believe. You had opportunities. You couldn't take advantage of it. I think a solid quarterback puts you over that hump, but we'll see. But in all this talk, where does UCF really stand when it comes to the Big 12? We're going to talk about that right after a quick word from our sponsors. This episode of Locked On UCF is brought to you by our friends at Game Time. Spencer, what was the most exciting game you went to this year? I was at Auburn versus Tennessee basketball about a week ago, and man, was that exciting.
I tell you, I was at the Oregon-Idaho game, which shouldn't have been exciting, but it was. And I was at the Big Ten championship game as well. Ooh. So either one of those has got to take the cake. I got my ticket for the Big Ten championship game on Game Time because there was a snafu in the credentialing application there, but Game Time came through because Game Time just delivers. That's the way they roll.
Well, let Game Time come through for you as well. So whether you're attending a college football game, basketball game, or if it's the NFL playoffs, which are going on right now, Game Time has you covered. The energy, the excitement, the connection with the other fans, Spencer, it's unmatched. And I remember the thrill of seeing my favorite team clinch a playoff win. It's a memory I'll never forget. This year, Game Time makes it even easier to create those unforgettable moments with their new feature, Game Time Picks. It filters out all the fluff and the shows that...
Get rid of the fluff. Out with the fluff. Out with the fluff. Right. Trim it.
Zero fluff over here with Game Time. And it shows you only the best deals. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. If you are Scott Frost, you've got to establish yourself in the Big 12. Now, we mentioned in the last segment that the media had their ideas about who would finish where, and boy, were we wrong. Everybody was wrong, except for Spencer. He said Arizona State was not
half right. I got half right.
But I want to read these Big 12 preseason standings. The media picked Utah to finish first. Kansas State 2, Oklahoma 3, Kansas 4, Arizona 5,
Oklahoma State. 6. You left out the state in Oklahoma there.
Yeah, appreciate that. Iowa State 6, West Virginia 7, UCF 8, right in the middle of the pack. Texas Tech 9, TCU 10, Colorado 11, Baylor 12, BYU 13, Cincinnati 14, Houston 15, and in the 16th slot, Big 12 champion Arizona State. This is not an exact science. It's hard, right? It's hard getting these right. It's hard projecting injuries and things that happen. But ultimately, it turned out almost the exact opposite in the Big 12. And now you and I know Arizona State finished first. BYU was at the top of the pack. Iowa State was competing for a playoff spot. Colorado was right in the mix. They had them 11th. And then at the bottom, Oklahoma State, who was in the top 4, finished dead last. UCF picked 8th, finished 15th. Arizona way down there. Predicted champion Utah, 13th. This was a complete disaster in terms of how they picked them. If you're Scott Frost, let me not say that. Let me ask Spencer. Spencer, where does UCF fall in the Big 12 hierarchy right now in your mind? Are they a middle of the pack team again? I feel like they're middle of the pack until proven otherwise. But where do you see them?
I think they're in between where they finished last year and where they were picked in the preseason. I'd probably say around 11 or 12.
Okay.
Just because the depth of the conference, I don't think can be overstated. I mean, you once again, for a second straight year, and this is what makes the Big 12 so much fun, you once again have legitimately 7 to 8 teams that you can talk me into winning a conference championship in the Big 12 next season. And that's a rarity. You certainly don't have that in the Big 10. I don't even know that you have that many in the SEC, and I don't think you have that in the ACC. In the ACC, I think you've got Clemson, you've got Miami. I don't know if Duke can win the ACC championship. They're trending upwards, but like you've got no more than 4, maybe 5. You go to the SEC, and yeah, Alabama can, and LSU can, and I mean, technically, Texas A&M and Tennessee could, but we haven't seen them go to an SEC championship game in my lifetime. Yeah. So if they're going to just suddenly break through and do that, they'd have to get past the Georgias and Alabamas and Texases of the world. But I think the depth is really, really good in the Big 12. Again, they have had some strong off seasons. Look at Texas Tech, a top 5 nationally ranked transfer portal class. That's not common in the Big 12. You don't see Big 12 schools recruiting that hard generally, but you have seen Colorado hit the portal the last couple of years. I think they're a regression candidate without Shedeur Sanders and Travis Hunter in there. But Texas Tech was a good team last year. Ended the season 9-4, an 8-win regular season. They've got a returning quarterback and a bunch of talent on that roster. I think they could be a really, really good team come 2025. But for UCF, I think it'll come down to the coaching job that Scott Frost is able to do, because Kenny Dillingham took preseason last pick Arizona State to a Big 12 championship, not because they had more talent than everyone else, but because they are just phenomenal as a coaching staff. They work together very well as a unit, and Sam Levitt played really good ball. Cameron Scadaboo was, of course, just unlike anybody else, but I think the top of the Big 12 is crowded once again. You've got BYU up there. I think Kansas State could be really good. I do think Utah was actually what we thought they would be last year. They just ended up not having a quarterback because he got hurt again, and when he was healthy, he wasn't really healthy. Yep. So if they had their defensive metrics last year were the exact same as what we expected them to be. Like, they were one of the best defenses in the conference, but they had no good quarterback play. Now, that's on them for not being able to find a backup, and other teams are able to do that, but not many schools really can survive losing a starting quarterback. It's just that guy's the starter for a reason. And you lose Cam Rising, and you're trying to run with a true freshman in Isaac Wilson, and it was a complete and total mess. But if they had good quarterback play, you still cannot convince me Utah would have been in the Big 12 championship picture. I'm not guaranteeing they would have won it. They were my preseason pick to win it. But everyone loves to dog on them and, say they were not this and they were not that. Well, they've got a quarterback in there now with an offensive coordinator who came over from New Mexico, and those two dudes were just making New Mexico a or more relevant than they should have been in the Mountain West this past year. So I think that they are poised to be in the top of that fold again, and you just keep going down the list and say, who's UCF beating out here, right? Like, who are they better than on paper with the roster they have? So coaching has to be able to overcome that.
Yeah, I agree with you. If you're UCF and you're looking at where you finished, you were second in the Big 12 in yards per game, and you finished where you finished. Obviously, that had a lot to do with the rushing game, with the rushing attack and RJ Harvey and what he was able to accomplish on the ground.
You want to talk about fitting into the brand of the Big 12 conference, Mike? Second in the conference in yards per game, but can't stop a nosebleed. You're finishing 15th.
Right.
That's as purely Big 12 as I have ever seen.
248 yards per game on the ground if you're UCF, 2,977 total rushing yards, but no balance. There was no balance at all. And so I think that's what keeps you in that middle to lower tier in the Big 12. If you don't have dynamic quarterback play, it's going to be hard to rise to the occasion. You said something earlier I want to expound on, and that's that, when you have your quarterback and when you have a dude at quarterback, it can cover a multitude of sins, Spencer. Sometimes when you're in a busted play and you have a quarterback who can create, or he can go through his reads, or he can get you out of a bad play, it helps a lot. And I think that Scott Frost has to find that guy. He's got to find that guy at quarterback, and he may not have him year one. But you also said something that I preach, and it's that if you don't have two quarterbacks that can get the job done in today's college football, you're playing with fire. You referenced the SEC. Well, for the last 2 years, over half the teams in that league have gone to their backup quarterback to start at least one game. Meaningful game, not we're just going to try this guy. It's like somebody got hurt or they weren't playing well, and we had to pull the guy and play the backup. So those opportunities are there for those guys, and you've got to have depth in that room as well too, because it is really hard to compete if you're one quarterback injury away from being in the bottom of the conference. Now, that goes to the portal and recruiting, like you said. If you're evaluating at a high level and you're evaluating better than your peers, until you have proof of concept and the results on the field this time around at UCF, you're going to have to outcoach the guys that you're going up against. You're going to have better game plans. You can, the talent gap always shows up. It feels like when you get to those higher levels. If you're Arizona State, man, that Arizona State versus Texas was one of the best games of this playoff season.
Phenomenal. It was probably the best. It was the best game of the playoff.
Mm-hmm. However, when the game was on the line, one of the highest rated quarterback prospects we've ever seen in Quinn Ewers made the play that they needed, and you just didn't have that on the other side.
Well, he didn't just make the play, Mike. He got them into the right play.
Yeah.
Because they show a cover zero look, and he's able to make the protection adjustment, get them into the right sequence, and he's got 3 receivers that are one-on-one, and the transfer Matthew Golden comes up and just cooks a defensive back who didn't have much of a chance. I mean, that defensive play call, I know it took plenty of flack after the fact because hindsight's 20/20, but I've seen that work countless times. Why don't you ask the Buffalo Bills if blitzing on a big 4th down is effective or not? Because last time I checked, if it gets there, if it's orchestrated correctly, yeah, that's the best defense you can call, is not let the quarterback get off a good pass at all. And Josh Allen still got it off, but I mean, he's also just an absolute freak. But I think that for UCF, that's one of the reasons I don't look at them as, oh yeah, they're going to come out and pop in year one, because who's going to guide them there?
Who's going to get them there? Yeah.
And I know that Arizona State, you could have said the same thing last year about Arizona State, but also hindsight's 20/20. Perhaps we should have been tipped off to how good Sam Leavitt is, because number one, he was a blue chip quarterback prospect coming out of Westland High School in Oregon, and number two, he beat out Jaden Rashada, who everyone expected to be the guy because he had a lot. He gets a lot of attention because of the wild recruitment, and he was a mega talented kid. But they didn't just push Jaden Rashada out. They had an open quarterback battle, and Rashada lost it. And now you see why. And Sam Leavitt played like a veteran. So does UCF have a guy that can play like a veteran, that can be that high-level executor of the offense? I don't know that we know. Ja'Curry Brown's a really talented kid, but I mean, can he elevate to that next level? We don't know. But should he be given a chance if he shows enough in spring ball and fall camp? Yeah, I mean, I would think so. I would think so, because then you have the opportunity to use this year kind of as a developmental chance.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, they've got to get the roster in order if they want to get out of that middle of the pack status. Again, we mentioned in the first segment, it's going to take a couple of years, but you got to show progress every year towards that goal. I think Scott Frost has what it takes to get that done, but that starts in the spring. In his first spring at UCF, we're going to talk about what they need to accomplish in spring practice this year, right in our next segment. Spencer, spring practice is on us so fast after these bowl games ends. It feels like
can't get here soon enough, Mike.
Yeah, man.
Countdown to football's on. We get less than 8 months. Less than 8 months. We're going to have meaningful, impactful football. We're getting there.
The longest offseason of any sport is college football. But we do have off-season activities that you don't have in the pros that we are highly interested in, and one of those is spring practice. Now, it's becoming increasingly common that from the high school recruits, they're early enrollees. So these guys, with the early signing period, they're saying, I'm going to graduate and I'm going to get into spring practice so I can get a leg up on any position battle that's going on, and also get ingrained with my teammates, get in my playbook, and get settled into the college experience. This spring, I think that your number one goal has to be establishing whatever the new culture. What is Scott Frost's culture going to be at UCF? What is it going to mean for these guys to play for Scott Frost? Because once you establish that culture, you may have some guys who aren't bought in or decide that this is not for me. And that's going to help shape your roster moving forward. What are some things that you see that teams need to accomplish in the spring, particularly teams like UCF that are going through a coaching change and are trying to reestablish a roster hierarchy and some culture?
Well, I think culture is a typical buzzword to throw around, but I do think there is real value in coaching staffs doing that. I've seen it up close before where a coach comes in and kind of cleans house and says, look, this is the way we do things here. And if you don't want to do that, there's the door. Don't let it hit you on the way out. And sometimes that's mean, cruel, not, but sometimes it's essential. I don't think UCF had huge cultural issues this past season. Just the mix between Gus Malzahn and KJ Jefferson did not work out as I thought it would and as others thought it would. I think UCF would be a 9-win team last year. Instead, it was 6-6, right? Yeah. And I think that's one part of it. Was it? Did they miss the bowl game?
Yeah, they missed the bowl game.
Okay,
yeah.
So I've got my years crossed up there with UCF, but when you have the opportunity to come in and start something new,
4-8. Sorry,
as a head coach, see, we're just blocking all this stuff out. We've blocked it out. It was so bad that we just don't even want to think about what happened last year. That's where UCF fans should.
Coaches, yeah,
yeah. Look forward, not backward. Right. That's all ancient history. But for Scott Frost, yeah, culture is one thing, but identity is another. He has to come in and get everyone to understand what they're going to be as a football team. There's more than one way to figure out how to win football games. Do you want to do it with a rushing attack? Do you want to do it with a spread offense? Do you want to run a lot of tempo? Do you want to throw the ball? Do you want to be balanced? What are your keys on defense? All of those things are something that I don't even know if the staff has a 100% understanding of, because they don't know how their personnel are able to run certain things. They might get in there and have an approach of, this is how we want to play. We want to do this, and then see, yeah, this roster, these guys can't do that, but we can make it work over here. We can make this sort of tweak, stylistically or personnel wise to try and get ourselves to be better. So I think those are the two things that he's got to figure out. And then we've touched on it, the quarterback. They have to figure out what they want to do at quarterback. Do they want the best short-term solution, or do they want the best long-term solution? Or is that the same guy? That's got to be your number one priority if you're Scott Frost as an offensive guy. He and Mackenzie, Milton have some options, as you've listed, but are they going to be able to put things together quickly, or is this something that might not even get decided until fall camp? Because, if guys are close in battle, I don't know that there's a hurry to name a starting quarterback, again, because while there should be an expectation to win some games and not have, this 2-10 disaster Florida State style season for UCF in year one under Scott Frost, I don't think there should be an expectation either of, hey, you got to be able to come in, turn things around, win 9-10 games. No, you can use this as a soft reset sort of year to look forward.
Look, establish your culture. Identify your leaders, identify the guys who are going to carry the flag for you, and move it forward. That is the mission this spring if you're Scott Frost. But my mission is to have you back on Locked On UCF to talk more college football in the future. Spencer, before we get out of here, tell people where they can find you.
Locked On College Football, Locked On Ducks, Monday through Friday on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts as well. If you want to know anything going on about Oregon, got you covered. But Locked On College Football, covering the biggest stories in the greatest sport on planet Earth. I talk about this sport all year round because it is truly the greatest. And I'm on Twitter at @McLaughlin_CFB as well. Great to talk to you, Mike G.
Thank you so much for making Locked On UCF your first listen of every day, guys. For your second listen, head on over to Locked On Big 12. Our guy Drake Toll leads the conversation in conference realignment news and pulls no punches when it comes to talking about every team in the Big 12, including the UCF Knights. You can find Locked On Big 12 on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. You can find us here tomorrow on Locked On UCF.